Ukraine has once again defied expectations. One of Russia's most critical supply lines has been struck from an unexpected direction. 800 kilometers away, far from the front lines, the supply chain crossing the Caspian Sea has collapsed. The target was a cargo ship loaded with Shahed-type kamikaze drones from Iran. A single hit, a single ship. But the impact threatens the entire supply line. How did Ukraine manage to open Russia's most heavily guarded rear door? On August 14th, Ukraine's Special Operations Forces carried out a precision drone strike on the port of Olia in the Astrakhan Oblast. This attack was not merely a tactical maneuver, but a direct strategic message aimed at the heart of Russia's military cooperation with Iran. The port of Olia is no ordinary shipping point. It serves as the back door through which unmanned aerial vehicles, ammunition, and ballistic missile parts from Iran enter Russia, effectively keeping Moscow's lifeline open. The attack carried out at this point represents the first direct intervention in a supply line that Russia has considered critical throughout the war. The target of the attack was the Port Olya 4, a cargo ship 400 feet long and weighing 4,900 gross tons. The ship is registered as part of Russia's state-linked MG Flot shipping network and is on the US Treasury Department's sanctions list. According to a statement by Ukrainian intelligence, the ship was carrying parts and ammunition specifically prepared for Shahed-type kamikaze drones from Iran. Among these parts were not only standard electronic components but also warheads, altitude and flight control systems, guidance sensors, and, according to claims, some ballistic missile components. Therefore, the target was not merely a cargo ship, but a logistical lifeline and strategic supply route fueling Russia's air attack capabilities. This attack also demonstrated that the port of Olia was much more than just a logistics center in technical terms, but rather the physical embodiment of the Iran-Russia military alliance. These systems, transported from Tehran via the Caspian Sea, had become one of the critical pillars of Russia's offensive capabilities on the front lines in recent months. Moreover, the attack was carried out approximately 800 kilometers away from the front line. This distance falls within a zone long considered an absolutely secure area in Russian military doctrine, where defense reflexes are low and radar coverage is weak. However, Ukraine has gradually dismantled this doctrinal comfort zone over the past 2 years. It identified radar vulnerabilities, tested air defense gaps, and created attack windows to disrupt Russia's reflex systems. The strike on Olia was one of the most striking examples of this process. Initial reports from the field indicated that Port Olya 4 was directly hit while moored at the pier. After being hit, the ship sank to the waterline, with extensive burn marks observed, particularly on the superstructure and the captain's bridge. OSINT shares indicated that the burn marks were concentrated on the superstructure and that images consistent with the point of impact were received. Although the extent of the damage has not yet been fully determined, this incident has been recorded as the first direct blow to Russia's supply chain through the Caspian Sea. International maritime security company Ambrey also confirmed the attack and stated that it was the first direct attack on a commercial vessel in the Caspian Sea basin by Ukraine. Another notable aspect of the operation is its timing. The attack coincided with the Trump-Putin meeting in Alaska, which caused a huge public outcry. The Kyiv administration positioned this coincidence as a direct message. Moscow's war plans via Iran will not be tolerated, and Russia's strategic comfort on the rear front will be disrupted. Ukrainian sources emphasized that the operation was carried out through joint planning between Special Operations Forces and military intelligence units, and that the aim of the attack was to disrupt Iranian military shipments. The geopolitical significance of this attack stems from the fact that the Caspian Sea is a closed area for navies other than those of the Caspian Five. The 2018 Aktau Agreement clearly states that only the armed forces of littoral states are permitted in the Caspian Sea and prohibits the deployment of third country forces. This legal framework transforms the Caspian Sea into a security geography distinct from open sea areas, making any attempt to exert influence on military targets in the region from afar even more noteworthy. Olia is located at the Volga-Caspian estuary in Russia's Astrakhan region and is defined as a critical node at the northern end of the international north-south transport corridor. Russian and regional sources highlight plans to increase the capacity of Olia and Astrakhan ports under the INSTC and expand their logistical functions through special economic zone status. The Volga-Don and Volga-Caspian waterways connect Olia to the Azov-Black Sea, Baltic and Caspian networks via Russia's inland waterways, but continue to face constraints such as seasonality, shallowness and lock capacity. The Caspian Policy Center and other analyses have documented that Iranian-Russian military and supply traffic on the Caspian route has resorted to methods such as AIS manipulation, blackouts and multiple STS transfers to avoid sanctions and monitoring mechanisms. General Staff data revealed that ports and terminals accounted for a significant share of total successful strikes during Ukraine's deep strike campaign throughout 2025. This attack profile targets the supply economy, including oil refineries, fuel depots, UAV missile supply nodes, and strategic transport routes. With the strike on a vessel in the Caspian Sea, deterrent uncertainty and an increase in insurance risk premiums are expected along the supply chain used between Iran and Russia. The new sanctions imposed by OFAC in July 2025 on a broad network of Iran-linked shipping companies directly targeted the transportation architecture operating through a shadow fleet and multiple STS chains. There were open-source indicators that some elements of this network were conducting low-profile shipments in the Caspian Sea via Russian and Iranian-flagged general cargo and container ships. Ukrainian sources insist that Olia served as a logistics hub for Shahed components arriving from Iran to Russia. From an operational perspective, the targeting of a vessel at Olia indicates that both the timing and target selection were intelligence-driven. The effectiveness of deep strikes is measured by the chain reaction they produce, with the links in the chain being Iranian-origin cargoes. The Caspian route where this attack, which caused serious damage to both Russia and Iran, took place is the Volga-Don connection, and Russia's supply lines extending to the front lines. The increase in port capacity and storage transshipment capabilities in the INSTC's Caspian branch is the main variable driving the growth of all types of cargo flows, including military supplies. Therefore, every kinetic attack on nodes such as Olia is not just a one-off operation, but triggers a strategic debate on corridor capacity and reliability. The Caspian Sea's closed basin regime, which precludes direct deterrence by NATO or other third-party naval forces, has made asymmetric range suppression one of Ukraine's primary options. In this option, the reconnaissance strike cycle is established through open-source tracking, satellite imagery, AIS anomalies, and region-specific blackout patterns. The attack is therefore not a single loss, but a systematic shadow cast over the reliability of a corridor. Findings from the Caspian Policy Center indicate that unmonitored vessels are increasingly being deployed in the Caspian Sea, creating blind spots for both sanctions enforcers and commercial intelligence. Windward and similar satellite maritime analytics reports emphasize that false identities, multiple STS, and AIS blackouts have become the core methods of the shadow fleet. Due to national law and the 2018 agreement, there can be no third-country military presence in the Caspian Sea. So Ukraine's concept of remote influence and cross-border sabotage UAVs fills the gap where the other side is most vulnerable. This gap requires a more sensitive distinction between civilian and military targets around ports and opens the door to legal disputes after an attack. A cautious framework was presented, noting the limited independent verification of the attack claims, and assessments were conveyed as Ukrainian statements. This caution is partially mitigated by open-source imagery and multiple media reports, but details regarding the extent of the damage and the operational method remain subject to official confirmation. However, the fact that Port Olya 4 is on the sanctions list provides a legal and administrative backdrop that strengthens suspicions of military logistical connections. Ukraine's targeting of ports and terminals as part of its deep strike campaign is part of a strategy to generate off-field costs and disrupt supply chain continuity. Such targeting aims to slow down the horizontal flow between Russia and its front lines via Iran, the North Caucasus, and the Volga-Ural industrial basin. On the other hand, due to the legal status of the Caspian Sea, which prevents the deployment of external naval forces, port facilities and canal transit points are vulnerable areas where maximum disruption can be achieved at minimal cost. The aging infrastructure and seasonal nature of the Volga-Don Canal limit tolerance in the face of such disruption. While scanning depth targets in the canal and its mouth mitigate this issue to some extent, water levels and sedimentation trends sustain medium-term vulnerability. Therefore, a single hit on Olia could not only affect a single ship, but also trigger risk premiums, delays, and the rewriting of safety protocols along an entire route. While announcing the attack in the hours leading up to its peak carries risks of disinformation and perception management, it can be interpreted as a rational timing choice in terms of political impact generation. The technically a tactic of creating saturation with multiple entry points and false targets against a port target may have been used. However, the type of munitions and flight profile have not been officially disclosed at this stage. Ambrey's assessment that the ship sank to its keel suggests that the explosion fire effect was concentrated in the cargo and superstructure. If the cargo was indeed Shahed components and munitions, a low-density but high-risk chain of combustion explosions would increase the likelihood of secondary damage to port security. One of the most important questions following the attack on the port of Olia is whether this move will trigger a broader cycle of retaliation, whether Moscow will interpret the attack as merely a local threat or as a systematic breach of Caspian security is the most critical unknown in this equation. From Russia's perspective, the first steps to be taken in the short term will include strengthening air and sea defense networks around the Caspian Sea. This could include concrete measures such as radar coverage along the Astrakhan and Olia axes, surface-to-air missile systems, and the redeployment of electronic jamming equipment within ports. However, there are serious doubts about how effective such measures would be in disrupting Kyiv's reconnaissance strike cycle. This is because Ukraine has already achieved the capacity to detect port targets from radar blind spots and through satellite tracking. The Iranian side, which is the second target of the attack, may quickly switch to logistical mirroring and cargo splitting methods to ensure the continuity of shipments. These strategies include dividing the same cargo into different ships for redundant transport, diversifying arrival points, and conducting deliveries outside the port using small boats. However, these methods will directly affect the efficiency of the Iran-Russia route by increasing loading and unloading times and operational costs. Following the attack in Olia, it appears inevitable that cargo ships traveling between Iran and Russia will be subject to more intensive inspections. This tightening will not only affect port security controls but also alter insurance companies' risk assessments. In particular, international marine insurance companies raising premiums for Caspian ports or refusing coverage altogether could lead to a greater reliance on shadow fleets. As a natural consequence, there will be a noticeable increase in vessels with AIS turned off, flag changes, or cargo information concealed. However, the Olia example demonstrated that such methods carry critical vulnerabilities at port-based final delivery points. The fact that operational impacts can be created even with a low radar signature attack that is not visible in open sources has brought the need to rethink not only the route, but also the arrival protocol in the supply chain. From a technical and infrastructural perspective, the Olia attack necessitates the restructuring of port security protocols. Additionally, changes will occur in the technical tracking chain following this attack. New patterns based on open-source monitoring will create a new risk algorithm around parameters such as anomalies in port traffic, frequent changes in ship identities, and increased cargo density at Iranian port exits. From Ukraine's perspective, deep attacks provide indirect relief to frontline positions under pressure and disrupt Russia's operational rhythm. From Russia's perspective, the flexibility of the supply economy and the activation of alternative corridors become the main focus of defense planning. From Iran's perspective, the political cost of capacity moving through the Caspian Sea increases, and the sanctions insurance multiplier rises. Of course, here is a short but striking conclusion paragraph tailored to the tone and content of the text. In conclusion, the attack on the port of Olia is not merely the sinking of a single ship, it is a pivotal moment that directly impacts the Iran-Russia supply chain, Caspian security, and logistical strategies. This action, with its profound military and economic implications, declares to all actors that Russia's rear front comfort is now a thing of the past. Thank you for watching.